Welcome back to Generator, my friend. This is episode 54, and I'm calling it the Thin Blue Ride because, well, that's the nonprofit started by my next guest. Jonathan Daige is a veteran. He's a retired cop from Worcester, Mass., and he's the founder of the Thin Blue Ride. It's an organization that helps other veterans in law enforcement and first responders with their battles against cancer. JD has a hell of a backstory, which I'm going to let him tell you all about, but it involves multiple forms of cancer, multiple surgeries, leukemia, and everything that goes along with years and years of fighting for your life. And if nothing else, JD is a fighter. I was absolutely blown away by his ability to move forward every day when most of us would have thrown in the towel. As much as I talk about mindset being the important thing when it comes to success, JD is the embodiment of it. One of my best friends from college, his name's AC, he was a fellow SWAT officer with Jonathan, and he was the one that originally introduced us a few months back. I am so grateful that he did. While I recorded this episode a little while ago, it just so happens that I'm releasing it here on July 4th, which seems pretty appropriate given JD's background. Sure, we had a handful of technical difficulties throughout the interview, but the message here is really inspiring. It's incredible, actually, and it's matched only by the humility of JD himself. To date, Thin Blue Ride has raised over $800,000 for what he calls cancer warriors, and they're just getting started. So why don't we get started so you can hear all the details from the man himself? Here comes my conversation with Jonathan Daige. I hope you enjoy it, and happy 4th of July, America. Actually really excited that you're here because when you first got in touch with me and started telling me about Thin Blue Ride, first, you bring up AC's name and I'm like, okay, well, now you've got my attention, right? Nobody knows AC. And so in reading about everything you're doing, I was admittedly a bit skeptical. I was just like, all right, here's somebody started a nonprofit, great. And then I started to look at what you were doing, and I was amazed at everything you've been able to accomplish in a really short period of time. You seem like you're insanely busy with all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's, that pushing a rock up a hill, it stops when if I'm not driving it. And there's been so many open-ended emails that I send out. I'll reach out to a name brand and be like, because I stand behind I stand behind Ridgeline, I stand behind Softly. The things that especially the paramilitary drug police stuff that I go after. Like every shirt I wear is either Thin Blue Ride or another nonprofit or another organization, right? And it's good seeing the GWAT guys like supporting one another and driving their business. And it's just, trying to get exposure. And it's funny because sometimes I'll ask, like I use the Protect products, like the liquid stuff, hydration, sleep, all that good stuff. And I drink like 2 of these a day. And I reach out to them. I'm like, hey, I got a golf tournament. I beat cancer like a whole bunch of times. I use your stuff every day, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, we can't really give stuff out. It's like, we're big enough, but we're not big enough to where people like companies like 511 are like, hey, here's a bunch of stuff.
Sure.
So we're breaking that mold, especially now that we have a vehicle that like is all decked out and the camo with our names on it. So now I could pull up to a business and say, hey, can we get a sponsorship for a golf tournament? And they look outside, they're like, oh, these guys are legit.
Yeah.
And mainly it is me that is the driving force. And I have my buddy Joe who does more of the organizational stuff. And it's a little more like harder to get other people involved in what we're doing. But sometimes people pull through and other times it's, just grinding.
Man, that's the day-to-day now in terms of influencing or trying to get sponsorships on board is there's such that game to play, right? Where you have to sell yourself enough that they see some return on their investment, unless they're, connected to the organization. But yeah, we all, we're all doing the same things. And sometimes it can be a little bit demoralizing, but it seems like through all of your efforts, all that marketing, that natural marketing is really starting to come along. So we're going to talk about all of that. I want to hear about the truck. I want to hear about the rides, but let's start at the beginning and talk a little bit about, I'm always curious, why'd you enlist? Why'd you get into the Army in the first place? And then let's cover that, period of Iraq and then law enforcement. And this isn't Sean Ryan's podcast, right? We're not going to be doing this for the next 3 hours, or Rogan. My audience can only hold their attention for me for so long. They love you, but they only listen to me for so long. So why don't we start at the beginning? Like, tell me about your career, and then we'll move into how you beat cancer. Spoiler alert, right? So let's start at the beginning.
So I worked for a family business, grew up doing construction, steel work, working in my father's metal fab shop, and it was putting steel in the saw, cutting it, drilling holes in it, welding clips. And then the best part that I loved about that job was going to a job site, starting with a foundation and then leaving with a structure at the end of the day, which was pretty cool. We weren't union workers, so we didn't have any of the huge, buildings like you see in Boston, but a few stories up, and that was, exciting enough to be walking on some beams and throwing some 3/4 bolts in. And it's funny because now I'm back in the family business. My father has a crane company, so I'm going out to job sites and I'm looking and seeing what guys are doing, and it's like night and day from when I did it. So, I started officially probably, I think when I was in the 8th grade, working for my dad on job sites. So, right at the late 90s, and then 9/11 happened. So I remember being in the shop that day, all over the news, radio, because we didn't have any TVs in the shop. And then seeing that, I remember going to grab lunch at a local spot, pick up all the food, and just watch, everyone sees the planes that they keep showing hitting the towers. So right after that, I decided I always was driven towards the military. And that was the catalyst of being like, okay, I'm going to sign up.
Yeah.
So probably a day or two after that, I ended up going to Park Ave down in Worcester, talking to the Army recruiter. I wanted to drive cool Army trucks. I kind of wanted to go full time.
Yeah.
And I told myself, if this sucks, I'm stuck there for 2 years, no matter what. And it's a big, like when guys sign up, it's, you're just saying goodbye, putting your life on pause for who knows how long, and you're going into the unknown. So, hats off to those guys who would just sign up for enlisted officers who do that active duty time, and they're like, hey, if it sucks, too bad, I'll figure it out. So, and in the reserves, you could actually put in to go active duty. So my thoughts were, I wanted to be a cop as well. And having that veteran status is something that I needed because I do not test well. I'm not one of those training students. So at that time, I was like, well, all right, I need that veteran status.
Yeah.
And I wanted to join. So, that was the reason for signing up initially. So in October 16th was my start date in Fort Knox in basic training.
Wow.
And we were in limbo for about 2 weeks because they were pushing all the combat arms, like infantry guys, and down there they have cap scouts and tankers. So they were pushing those guys over so they could get through basic and their job training. It just sucked. It was limbo. So we couldn't do the basic training stuff. It's not like the movies where as you get off the bus and you run right into the barracks with all your gear, shave your head.
Right.
It was close to that, but it was a lot more waiting around, which, you sign up to do Army stuff and you're sitting in the barracks with a shaved head and some camis, like, all right, when are we going to do something? Once basic training started, I thrived. I was, I'm like, they're paying us to march around and shoot stuff and learn all this cool stuff. I'm like, this is awesome. And, I loved it.
Yeah.
Went to the job training school, which is in Missouri. So I was learning how to direct trucks. And my unit was out of Brockton, Massachusetts, the 325th Transportation. And we drove 5,000-gallon fuel tankers.
Wow.
And once I knew I got that job, I told myself, everyone's looking at me like, you're driving a bomb.
That's exactly the thought that went through my head.
Yeah, but typically, and we were driving JP8, which is jet fuel, diesel fuel,
Right.
and it's a very stable fuel. That's why the military uses it. So there were times when we were in Iraq. We get there March 24th, 2003, in country, and I remember we took civilian flights over there, landed in Kuwait, and we're getting our gear off the plane, and we hear lightning, 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 and we're looking at each other like, what is that? You see people putting their gas masks on, running to bunkers, and we're, in the military, it's gas, gas, gas. But
Yeah.
for whatever reason, it was lightning, and people are donning their masks for a chemical attack. We're running to bunkers, and I'll never forget it. I was going to a bunker, and this guy's shutting the door. A British soldier, he goes, "There's no room in here, mate." And shuts the door. And we're like, okay, you gotta find another bunker. So, I mean, it was like sitting there, and I remember having a bottle of water because in the military, they give you canteens.
Yeah.
And on the top of the canteen, there's a little, when your mask is on, there's a little straw that you can grab with your tongue. Another straw that's on the exterior part of your mask. Plug it into the canteen, and you could drink with your mask on. Well, we didn't have canteens. We had bottles of water. So we're in the bunker, put our chemical suits on, hood and everything. So you got your military camouflage, your desert camouflage. And we had a J's list, which was called the chemical suit. And basically it's like a winter jacket.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, the pants with the bib, the rubber boots, the rubber gloves, you got to cinch everything up. And I'm just looking at my water. I'm like, can't drink this. So that was day one in Kuwait. But yeah,
Welcome to war, sir.
yeah. For the next couple of days, we were intense staging. Initially, our unit was supposed to go to Turkey and bring fuel missions down from Turkey to northern Iraq. And that didn't happen. Turkey didn't want us. So we were in theater waiting for orders, and it came down. Our company commander said, all right, we need volunteers to go up to Iraq. And me and my buddy were like, hey, let's go. I don't remember how many of us there were, but we all got in the back of a 5-ton military cargo truck. We just had our rucksacks. There were so many people. We had the rucksacks on the outside, like strapped to the benches. So the whole back was filled with our rucksacks. Soldiers are filled on the benches. There's some guys on the floor. We had like a box of MREs and just driving up north to the Iraqi border, going into the unknown, 20 years old. Like, what the hell are we doing? As soon as we get to the border, we take our chemical suits off. Because typically we wouldn't wear them, but we'd have them ready and have our masks ready.
Sure.
So because it was so hot, it was about 120 with humidity in Kuwait, which was pretty brutal, especially coming from Fort Drum, New York. We were there January 20th to March, to the end of March.
Right.
So we were doing PT in 2 feet of snow. We went from one extreme to the other, like literally overnight. We get to the Iraq border. Everyone's taking their J's list off, and it's typical monkey see, monkey do. We see some other guys doing it, and we're like, okay, we can take our stuff off. Iraq's not gonna bomb Iraq. They're trying to bomb Kuwait. So take our J's list off, and then we go up through the demilitarized zone, and we see these trenches and fences, and there's a small village in southern Iraq. And then we drive a little further. We see some vehicles burnt to a crisp from a push a few weeks before. Okay, see a burnt car with some bodies in it. Like, all right, let's see what else. Keep going. Then we kind of drove up a few hours from the border, and it was a highway of death from Desert Storm when all those vehicles got bombed from the jets. And they were just literally pushed off to the side of the road. So hundreds of vehicles, and we're driving by that piece of history, and keep driving, get off the trucks. Our FOB, forward operating base, was random off the side of the highway. They call it highway of death, highway MSR Tampa, and the military term for it. So we were right off the highway, and we were doing fuel missions, so it was easy on and off, and there was nothing around. That base moved to another base, and we would do daily missions. We'd drive for a couple hours. It'd be pretty mellow. Then there would be into the south part of the Sunni Triangle, into areas where it'd be a little more, hair on the back of your neck standing up. And we got lucky. We did missions every day. We had pop shots. We had some bullets in the tankers where fuel was coming out. the fuel is actually more dangerous as vapors. So we would have, it'd be a 5,000 gallon tanker, but we'd have about 4,700 gallons of fuel in it. We did missions every day, anywhere from 3 hours to 15, 16 hours, sometimes getting lost, sometimes going to bases. Like we ended up one time in Babylon, which was pretty cool. And we're trying to get out to check out Babylon because it's beginning of civilization.
When did you become desensitized? How long, Ian, was it? Was it a week? Was it a day?
Initially, I vaguely remember being all right, we're at war, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're not combat arms. We're not going after the fight. We're, fueling the fight was our motto. But it was, 20 years old, just out of basic training, and I was ready for anything mentally. And I think looking back, that's what's helped me this whole time of battling everything else. But I think in my head, it was being surprised initially, expecting the worst. Because when we were there, we were down to 1 MRE a day, 2 bottles of water, 1 bottle of water to shave and shower, the other bottle of water to drink.
Wow.
And in my eyes, I said it could always be worse. We were getting reports from Baghdad that there were guys in hand-to-hand combat. And I'm like, these guys are fighting. And I'm like, we're just driving trucks. And of course, in my head, the trucks are so loud, you can't really talk to the driver or passenger. In the Humvee, I was in the Humvee a lot as well, and we did like a gut truck. So we would have about 30 fuel tankers, 3 platoons. Each platoon had a Humvee. So we had a Humvee, no armor. I remember at one point we traded our doors for MREs. So then I'm like, we're driving Humvees with no doors on. I'm like, this is cool. IEDs weren't a thing. It was more pop shots from a distance. It sounded like hunting season. You drive and you hear a shot, you're like, oh, nobody get hit. Keep going.
Yeah.
I remember we had 818s were the trucks we had. They were like the Vietnam style trucks. We had Vietnam style vests. We had the 818s that had soft tops, like a canvas. There'd be these random, bridges in the middle of like over the highway. And there would be stories of snipers on bridges or hanging grenades or, some type of explosive devices. And we're in a truck that we can't, really get the gun out the front unless you pop the window open. So a lot of us took our knives and cut like a C shape and then stitched it with parachute cord so we could stand up, flip the seat up, and make a 5-ton, a tractor trailer like a gun truck.
Wow.
And some guys are saying, hey, you're ruining Army equipment. I go, I'm not going to get shot. Or, I'd rather be at the ready than waiting for the unknown. Always playing scenarios in your mind is getting you ready for, you don't want to be surprised, basically.
Yeah.
What if this happens? What if the truck in front of us flips over or gets ambushed? What are we going to do? Are we going to push through? Are we going to wait? Are we going to drive around? Like, there's so much that goes on. So when something happens, you can react.
And I think that scenario prep, that mission prep, whatever you want to call it, is a part of the training that I think a lot of people forget about, no matter what your industry is, right? Whether it's being a warfighter, whether it's being a CEO at a company, you have to think through all of the angles so that when that moment arises, you've at least thought through, all right, here are my options, A, B, C, which one is the best in that moment. So with 2 tours in Iraq and then transferring over to law enforcement and you're in Worcester and your head is still on a swivel, right? So what was that transition like? Was it easy? Was it hard? Did you find it natural?
I thought being a cop because I always say it's a paramilitary organization, there was a lot more wiggle room in the department. Good and a bad thing, right? Like, you want to let officers function in a way that they can use their own discretion. And when I get on, we went through the academy, and Worcester's got a great academy. It is, they exceed what the state levels are as far as shooting, domestic, all the stuff that we go over. It's not minimum. It's, surpassing whatever that is for the state.
Sure.
So when we got on, myself and almost my whole class, we were stuck in the cell room driving the paddy wagon, working prisoners I was in there for 3.5 years. So I went in ready to, do the city cop thing and have fun. We were having fun in the cell room, but we weren't doing any police work. It was driving the paddy wagon, doing fingerprints, doing bookings, grab some bologna sandwiches for the prisoners. And it was, I'm glad it happened because when I got on the road, I wasn't making any bullshit arrests. Right. Meaning you could have 10 scenarios Or you could have one scenario and 10 cops, there's going to be 10 different outcomes. You know, you don't have to arrest anybody all the time unless it's a violation of a restraining order. And you could write complaints. You could, you know, you could do so many different things as a cop. In the city, it's great because you're never really going to a call alone. You'll go to report calls alone. But if they say, hey, there's a guy with a machete on Millbury Street, right, everybody on that side of the city is going. Being a city cop, you get a lot of experience real quick.
I bet Worcester was no joke. I mean, I went to school there, and I remember working. I would stay there year round, and I'd work in the city. And mid-90s, Worcester wasn't all that pretty. And I've driven through it a handful of times, and while they put some lipstick on a pig here and there, it's still a big urban playground. And, you know, I don't know, how many are sworn on the Worcester PD?
I'd say like 350.
350. So, I mean, it's a big force. So
yeah,
there's a lot of ground to cover, and I can't imagine you guys had a ton of downtime. So when did you start to move over into the SWAT team, right? Totally different group, totally different dynamic, different types of calls. When did you start moving over there?
So initially I wanted to join the SWAT. Of course, it was, hey, I want to do SWAT. And I remember in the academy, hey, recruit Daige, what do you want to do? I want to be a good cop and I want to be on the SWAT team. And they're like, give it 10 years, kid. I'm like, okay. On the SWAT team, they don't want guys right out of the academy because they want to, it's a selection process and they want to know how guys act under pressure. They want the guys on the team to vote, you know, how it's, you could be a stud. You could shoot every target. You could get the best PT, the, you know, run times and everything else. But if you're one of those guys, it's in the gray area as far as moral values or whatever, then it's all right, take a back seat for now until the next tryouts. And typically it's tryouts every 3 years. My thing, I tried out for the SWAT team when I was still in the cell room on my 3rd year, and I knew I wasn't going to make it. But I said, well, maybe with my military time, they'll look at me and be like, this kid did 2 deployments. He's, you know, got enough knowledge, but I just wanted to do it. So did the SWAT tryouts, obviously didn't make it. I mean, I'm driving the paddy wagon. They're not going to call me to call us. So, you know, then it was, all right, wait another 3 years. And then that 3rd year ended up being 2012. And that's when I got diagnosed with testicular cancer. Well, I was 29 years old. I had pain in my groin. Backtrack to 2003 when I was in Iraq. I woke up in the middle of the night and I had an inguinal hernia. So I had an excruciating pain and my intestine dropped through my intestine wall. And I was in pain. I woke up. The pain went away, and then I sucked it up until I got home. Then I had surgery. So then fast forward to 2012, I thought I had a hernia again because I was getting ready for SWAT tryouts, working out a lot. Went to the doctors, went to the ER, and they said, you have a growth, come back next week. So I sat in the urologist office. They did an ultrasound on the testicle, and they said, you have testicular cancer. I was like, shit. Like, don't go to the doctors thinking you have cancer on a Friday because then you gotta wait till next week. But I remember calling my parents and telling them, hey, I suspected testicular cancer, but it would take 2 weeks after the surgery to get the biopsy, to get the numbers and everything. So that next week I had a surgery, a couple hours, I was home. I came back, it was a mixed germ cell non-seminoma tumor, testicular cancer. And, you know, on the road to recovery, then I went for some more scans and they found my lymph nodes were swollen. And they said it could grow to be a teratoma, which is basically like it could be a ball of hair, skin, bone, you know, like pretty disgusting, like sci-fi type stuff.
Yeah.
Or I could have surgery or remove it. So I opted for the surgery. They basically tore me open from my waistline to my sternum. They take everything out. You're like a human canoe. Take your lymph nodes out, put everything back in. So that surgery, I was out for 6 months and 2 weeks, and that was a very painful, slow recovery. My diet was like 5 grams of fat a day. And yeah, I just dropped a ton of weight. And then I was into the more holistic stuff too. You know, no alcohol, no dairy, no gluten, stuff like that. Fast forward, I get better. SWAT tryouts are coming up and start coughing up blood. I coughed up blood once on one day. And the next day I coughed up blood. Then the next day I coughed up blood. Because guys are stupid, you know, just like, yeah, whatever, no big deal. It's only a little blood. So I ended up going to the ER at St. Vincent's Hospital in Worcester, and they did a blood draw, and they did a scan, and they said you got 6 tumors in your chest and lungs. So my alpha fetoproteins is a blood draw, It's like their cancer numbers, and 15 is the number. 15 and under is what it should be. My numbers were like 55,000.
Wow.
So I had two on my lungs, one pushing on my jugular, another one on my stomach, and I was losing weight. And the only time I lose weight is if I eat super clean and I work out hard. And I was doing enough to have that noticeable weight loss. And I was coughing up blood. So that was, a sign of, hey, something's wrong. So at St. Vincent's, they said, we'll start chemo in 2 weeks. And the urologist there said, you need to go to Boston. This is beyond us. So we went to Boston on a word of advice: if your insurance doesn't want to cover it, if you ask your primary care for an out-of-network visit, then it's a, okayed visit in their insurance. So I went for an out-of-network visit to Dana-Farber, met Dr. Sweeney, my oncologist, and he didn't let me leave. Like, I went for a second opinion, and he said, you're technically stage 4 cancer. Like, you're not going home. Got admitted, and then I was hooked up to chemo 8 hours a day, 5 days a week.
I want to go back just a minute to when you first got the diagnosis that, maybe you thought it was another hernia. Everything that I've seen about you and talked to you about, mindset's a big thing, right? You go into the military, you're like, this ain't going to be that bad. And you work your way through it. You get into the PD and you're like, this ain't going to be that bad. I can work through it, right? And you just kind of always staying positive, always looking forward. That seems to be part of your character, right? Part of your work ethic. When you first got told, they're like, yeah, we found a lump. And it's where you definitely don't want it. What does your mind do at that point? Do you default to negative, or do you default to, well, I got this? Where was your mind at that moment?
I think it was more of a figure it out type thing. I feel like cops, veterans, it's an alpha kind of mindset of, there's a problem, let's fix it. Which isn't the best case when you're, trying to help people. Like, not everyone always wants an answer, right? And I've realized that over time. It's sometimes you just need to shut up and listen. So in my eyes, I was like, holy shit, cancer. And then I was like, wait, so you're going to take the testicle, take the tumor out, and then put the testicle back in? He goes, no, we take the whole testicle. So all of a sudden, I'm like, wait, now I'm going to have one testicle. What, like cancer? And then I just said, can I get a fake nut put in? And they said, yeah. I'm like, all right, yeah. I'm like, here's a problem. Here's you have cancer. We're having surgery next week. We're going to give you a fake nut. I'm like, all right, cool. And then it was lymph node dissection. You could either not have surgery, or you could have this major surgery to, dispel any discrepancies in the future. So I opted for that. Then it was 6 tumors in the chest and lungs, chemo 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 3 different types of very strong chemo on top of like potassium and steroids and all this stuff. So I'd do 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, go home for 2 weeks, go back 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, go home for 2 weeks. I did that for 5 sessions. Not that I had hair anyways, but I was down to like 7 eyebrows at one point. And I was 230 pounds, a lot of water weight because of all the IV fluid.
Swelling.
So there was scar tissue on the lungs. They did a lobectomy. So they went into the back. I have like this huge scar. Looks like a shark bite, basically. Well, it sounds cooler if it's a shark bite. They cut it open, broke the rib. And your right lung is made of 3 lobes. They took the top and bottom lobe of my right lung. The surgeon ended up saving the middle portion. He reconstructed a blood vessel because I told him, I'm like, look, I'm an athlete. And this guy is like Harvard med, Dr. Swanson. He goes, look at my waiting room. Everyone's 70 years old with COPD. And I'm trying to tell him, hey, what's my 2-mile run time going to be if you take lungs? And, he wasn't having it. He was just trying to do the best that he could. And because he knew I'm like, look, I'm an athlete. I'm not a paid athlete. I'm a police officer. I've always worked out. Like, I need to know what's going to happen. He saved it, for me, which was huge. Yeah. Then I went 2 weeks later after the lung resection for a follow-up to check on things because it was a major surgery. And then I go home and they called me and they said, hey, your mixed germ cell non-seminoma tumor spread to the brain. So then I went back, brain surgery, brain radiation a handful of times. Then I went and had to have the scar tissue on my left lung removed. So they did a scope surgery, removed 10% of my left lung. And then I had chemo again, outpatient, to be safe, I guess. This was all normal to me because I kept, I get cancer again. All right, let's do something. Oh, you get cancer again. And to me, I'm like, well, I'm in Boston. This is like normal. And everybody's like, this isn't normal. So after the chemo, it spread to the brain a second time. And this is all the mixed germ cell non-seminoma, the testicular cancer that spread everywhere. So then after that second brain surgery, radiation, then I was good. I was back to work and, back to being a cop again. But in the meantime, in between those surgeries, I started cycling. My buddy Mike worked at a bike shop at Bike Alley in Worcester. And then he's, mentioned, hey, you should start riding. I bought a bike. I bought this spandex suit. And every time we rode, he's extremely knowledgeable. Like Bike Alley sent him all over the country to go to these fit schools. So every time we rode, I had like a personal coach be like, hey, you might want to raise your seat a little bit or move your handlebars or get your cadence up to, 85 or 90 RPMs. I'm like, okay. So going into it, I got a lot of knowledge. And he always said, if you go out for a ride, make it 20 miles minimum. Don't do less than 20. I'm like, okay. So that summer, I rode over 1,000 miles between wow. May to August 1st. My oncologist mentioned doing the Pan Mass Challenge, and I didn't know where it was. Basically, a 192-mile bike ride in 2 days, and all the money you raise for your team goes to Dana-Farber Cancer Research. And my oncologist, Dr. Sweeney, was riding in that weekend that he told me about it, and I wanted to start my own team, so I came up with Thin Blue Ride, being cops. 3 of my friends from work signed up. It was like the Bad News Bears. We're learning how to cuff in and fall over. We were not cyclists except for Sergeant Metcalf, he was a cyclist. All of us we were trying to learn how to grab water bottles, flat tire, and all this craziness. But it was a hard 1,000 miles, and we raised a lot of money. My story got some traction with local media. With 4 of us, we raised $27,000 our first Pan Mass, which was huge.
Wow. That's incredible. How did you stay grounded throughout that whole period, right? So there's staying positive, and then there's faking it till you make it. And then there's the, oh shit, life just really took a left turn. I've got to believe there's something that you went to kind of stay grounded, right? We've talked about your mindset of, well, we got to figure out this problem, but how did your perspective on everything shift during that period?
Yeah, so I think one of the big things that helped me was keeping my mind busy. And with me keeping my mind busy, it was, even when I was doing chemo and radiation, I'd still, for example, I do 5 days of chemo. I'd go home Sunday night. Monday morning, it would be picture one of your worst hangovers. That's what Monday felt like. Tuesday felt like your second worst hangover. So I was way low. Yeah. I have a big family and a lot of friends from work, a lot of friends from home anyway. So even when I was in the hospital, I had guys working overnight shifts coming in to the hospital during the day. My parents would come after they get out of work. So it was a lot of support, and it was a lot of keeping busy, just mentally, conversation, watching a movie. I always enjoyed going to movies. I always enjoyed watching movies in Iraq because I would escape for an hour and a half. Yeah. And then the movie's over and you walk outside and the sand everywhere and you're like, oh. But I mean, it's an escape. So I used that working out. I remember I built this CrossFit gym, and I still use it to this day. And I remember I built this when I was going through chemo. Keeping the mind busy is super helpful. And luckily I have a big family and a good friend group where people were showing up. I think it would have been a lot harder if people weren't showing up. When you feel like shit, you look like shit. Mm-hmm. And then you're just basking in that all day. I feel like crap. This stuff's dragging me down. When you're surrounded by it in the hospital. I had them bring a stationary bike into my hospital room so I can hooked up the chemo, spinning. Wow. Using my head to do something. And I would sneak out with the tree and everything, the IV tree. And I'd go to the Harvard courtyard across the street. And then the nurses get a hold of that and they're like, you can't leave. I'm I'm not sitting in there for 5 days.
You're the worst patient ever.
Definitely. Yeah.
There had to have been a time to or maybe there wasn't. Maybe I'm just assuming. On those downtimes, no one's around, movie's over, can't leave your room. There's got to be this moment where I got to quit. I can't do this. I got to give up. Did that thought ever enter your mind?
No, I remember feeling, I think it was more towards the end of it. I was just tired of being told I had cancer. Yeah. So it was more I remember talking to a coworker, I see it. I'm yeah, I got another brain cancer, brain tumor, so I could have surgery again. And he was just man. And just his, it drained him.
Yeah.
And then he got me down. I'm no, I'm fine. I started to get upset too. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, no, I can't do this.
Right.
So yeah, that happened a few times. I think more towards the end because I'm like, I work out. I supposedly eat healthy. Like I'm not never gonna have a pizza again, but getting cancer free. I was cancer free for 7 years, and in that time, we turned Thin Blue Ride into a 501(c)(3). So we raised money for military veterans, first responders, and their families when they get cancer. And since we started in 2016 officially, 2015 we did the Pan Mass. We raised money, so we continue to raise money for Pan Mass. We've done a handful of rides. We've stopped just because the dollar amount is very high. If we had a corporate sponsor that would be like, hey, put our name on your jerseys and you're on kit and you guys could ride, we would love to. But I can't, Thin Blue Ride founder to be, hey, let's spend, I mean, we've spent $40,000 on a Pan Match ride to cure cancer. And I could give 4 families $10,000. I would rather do that. And that's what keeps us going is I was down for the count. My friends had a benefit for me at Mechanics Hall in Worcester. I had my high school football team there. I had the guys I went to Iraq with there. The whole police department was there. There was like 1,200 people at Mechanics Hall. And I'm proud to say, I think they drank that place out of booze that night. I couldn't even go to the bathroom because people were just coming up. And I remember I was like gray in the face. I'm like, I need an orange juice or something. But, people are coming out of the woodwork and showing support. So that's what drove me to say, let's help other people the way they help me. So now I'm a facilitator. Somebody has cancer, talk to them directly. Hey, do you want our help? I don't care if you say yes or no, because we're going to help you anyways. Send me some pictures. Don't just show some paperwork that you're a veteran or a first responder and that you have cancer, and people more likely show that stuff real quick.
Yeah.
And then we'll raise some funds, and then we'll get the funds and we'll cut a check to that person. And typically we'll add more to it. And I say we have the worst business model ever. We give away more than we take in, essentially. So, if we raise $2,500 for somebody, we'll throw on another $500, $1,000, $2,000, whatever. So, we've done $500 on the low end, and we've donated up to $50,000 on the high.
There's got to be, beyond the feeling of satisfaction that you're able to help people and the camaraderie of the shared experience with someone, you know what they're going through. Their family might not know what they're going through. You know what they're going through. Has there been a family that really, and I'm sure they all have unique stories and are touching in their own way, but has there been an instance that really stood out to you that said, this is what I was put here to do and help people like this?
Every case is different too.
Sure.
We also get these cancer, not everyone gets better, right?
Right.
And I struggle with that. And my wife likes to keep me in check because I'll get dragged down sometimes because it drags you down. Like we're dealing with some people that don't make it. And that's a lot. For me, it's more like Kelly does a good job of being like, you're making a difference here, and doing great things. So it helps to, it's like we get shitty news and then all of a sudden we turn it to be like, okay, it's about them. Let's help them with getting the right help, getting the right mindset. And I even find it hard for myself to talk to some other people that have cancers, like especially with terminal. Like I was never terminal. Like, essentially, yeah, if it wasn't treated, it could have been.
Sure.
But it's tough to, what do you say to somebody with terminal cancer? And I've found myself using my wording cautiously. Like I say, how are you doing today? Mm-hmm. Because it's like, how was Iraq? Oh, great. Yeah, war was awesome. Right. And I think in our society, there's a lot of that. Like if you lose a loved one, oh, you lost your grandparents. Oh yeah, how old? That's like, oh, they died from old age. It's common. It's societal thing, the conversation thing. And some people don't want to say. So I try to say the right thing, obviously. I think one of the latest ones, a couple of years ago, AJ LaPlante, he was a Middleborough cop, special forces soldier, SWAT guy, father, husband, like all around awesome guy. Like I didn't know him, but another friend reached out to me and said, hey, this guy needs help. He's not going to ask for it. He's not going to take it. So my spiel is, hey, I had great insurance and I had $26,000 in co-pays. Yeah. And people hear that and they're like, oh, Jesus, like, okay, like, yeah, let's raise some money. With AJ, that it was tough. Talked to him a lot, text message, some phone calls, had cancer. He got better, got sick again. and passed away from his cancer. And we're still in touch with his wife, Tracy. She came and spoke at our golf tournament last year. And like hearing the family speak, like I don't care about us. It's like, are we helping them? And it definitely shows. We started doing that a few years ago at our tournaments where we have people that we help out. I'm like, hey, do you want to speak in there? I'm more than happy to. You could hear a pin drop with 200 people in the room because it's showing what we're doing is making a difference.
What do you wish more people understood about this process, specifically as it relates to first responders, right? Because y'all are a different breed. Everybody that's a first responder of any sort has what I found to be generally a different mindset than the rest of the civilians. And what do you wish that more people understood about that community when they're going through cancer?
There's really nobody like this group. I kind of feel like there's veterans, first responders, and there's in that group I put people with cancer. Mm-hmm. I call them cancer warriors because, we survive a car crash or a plane crash. Like, you're a fighter if you're fighting cancer. Like, you have to do that on a daily basis. If you take a veteran, whether it's an Iraq veteran, Afghanistan, Vietnam, you put them in a room, they're going to have that commonality. Right. First responders, same thing. Somebody with cancer, same thing. Stories are the same, but a little different. And I think our network of helping each other out stands out a lot more than other occupations. Obviously it does, but I think with other jobs, some people, our jobs, we're putting ourselves in that way a lot of the times.
Yeah.
And it's not really thinking about it and we do it. And I think that's why the support is there. And that's why we've been successful with getting everyone rallied around this one person or this one family, which is huge.
What's it been like to get your health back while managing this nonprofit, while helping people, but trying to maintain your health, but working long hours, right? There's a cycle here that is very constructive and destructive. How do you manage that?
I don't know if I updated the site, but I still have. So 3 years ago, I got diagnosed with leukemia. So,
dude.
Yeah, dude, keep everyone on their toes. So,
doctors don't need more work. You don't need to keep bringing them work.
Yeah. So, 3 years ago, I got diagnosed with CML, chronic myeloid leukemia. And I've been taking, they say it's super rare, super treatable. I'm like, yeah, of course, it's all about me. And keep it interesting. So basically, I started taking Sprycel, which was a morning 2 pills, like 2 pills. I'd have to fast 2 hours before, 1 hour after taking them, and it was causing leg pain. And this was when I was still working. I was on the mounted unit, riding the horses full Worcester, and it was just. I remember telling my buddy Joe, who helps me run the nonprofit, I'm like, dude, today's not a good day. Like, my legs are killing me. So we covered for each other. Or he covered for me. I started to lose oxygen level, not lose oxygen levels, but when I would work out, run, my O2 levels would, everyone's at 100 or right around there. I would run, and then my levels would drop to like the high 80s. And I went to a pulmonologist, and she said, that's not good. So they'd switch my meds. But then I started taking Cigna. My oncologist said, oh, it's not a chemo pill. And then I get a call from the pharmacy, like, yeah, and this chemo pill, don't touch it, don't let your dog eat it, just take it in the morning. I'm like, oh, okay, super toxic, no big deal. So yeah, it's a chemo pill because if I don't take it, my Philadelphia gene, the white blood cells are going to elevate. BCR-ABL is the reading for this level. So that would get elevated. I retired officially from the police department after 18 years in December on a medical. So I retired at like 50% of the pay. Medical, I bought back some military time, which was nice. So retired free and clear of the city, but it was, 18 years in the cities. That's a good amount of time. And 8 years on the SWAT team. SWAT team was a lot of fun. Sniping with them, and me and AC did emergency operations. So basically it was a full-time SWAT team role, and we were on the day shift. So it was great. We'd listen to the radio, and then there would be a call for a guy with a knife, guy with a gun. Guy wanted to jump off a roof. I don't know why they call SWAT, because we're not we don't have any of that stuff. But we would go to all those hot calls essentially, and step back once I was trying to retire officially, and I had to tell myself, like, am I good with this? And it was kind of easy. It's tough because being a cop is not like any other profession. I put it up there with being in the military, being, I don't know, any, like maybe a doctor or something, not medically or intellect-wise, but those people are like, oh, there's JD, he's a cop. I was never JD a welder before.
Right.
You know, so it's one of those jobs that you just don't switch, you go to another one. Yeah, accepting that, hey, I'm done, 42 now, so now I want to get my health in order. So I'm getting stem cell treatment. I had this wonderful lady and her mother hear my story and then say, we want to pay for your stem cell treatment. So I went out to California, the Dr. Joy Collins clinic out there, had 3 treatments, and those actually helped my liver numbers because they were super elevated from the chemo pills. They were like, you're pre-diabetic, even though I stopped drinking, I stopped doing liver cleanses, and it got my ALT levels down to normal. And, you know, it was elevated for about a year and a half. So stem cells are awesome. I have a lot to do them again. I mean, you can use it for anti-ages.
Yeah.
Your DNA, or scar tissue in your lungs. And on top of that, I started taking this adenoid peptide. It's like BPC 157, which is a huge anti-inflammatory. I started taking methylene blue. I bought a red light for red light therapy. There's another machine. It's that Axion 2. It's like a oxygen. It's like a briefcase basically. It pumps oxygen, but with the oxygen, it has distilled water that turns into hydrogen, and the hydrogen oxygenates your blood cells. Cancer hates oxygen. And I guess it's similar to what a hyperbaric chamber would do. And I know people are doing the chamber with cancer treatments. So this guy, Matteo, is going to send me one to try out for 60 to 90 days. And I'm going to put it to the test. And I'm the type of guy who likes numbers. I'm going to go, run a half mile as fast as I can right now, engage my numbers. And then I'm going to get a machine for a day, for a week, for 2 weeks, and then see if it's actually working. If it's working, like my baseline has changed from, a couple of years ago, SWAT team and fit, to now it could be fit, but my O2 levels drop pretty quick if I'm doing some kind of HIIT workout. So I've been learning more about the alternative medicine side too. I mean, honestly, it's a little pricey at some points, but so is in your health, right? Like $26,000 in copays with a bunch of toxic stuff in your veins, or 20 grand for some stem cells, or 50 grand for stem cells. Like, realistically, all you have is your health. So it's worth the investment.
You've got this whole new mission now. You got to stay healthy for, right? You've got to try to do your best for that. So let's talk about Thin Blue Ride. You're still riding to any degree?
Yeah, I get the Peloton bike in front. That's an easy, throw the shoes on and go.
Right.
And I'm actually sitting I get these jujitsu mats and I'll meditate and do yoga and stuff. But we'll usually do road cycling in the summer. Now it's the season to start riding. I'm a fair weather rider. I'm not going out with cold weather gear.
I hear you.
Mountain biking, the same thing, like showing up to Highland Mountain Bike Park or whatever. Around here is good too, but I like getting on the bike, and we're going to try to get, we're going to have a golf tournament, but we're trying to get kind of something in the work as far as cycling. Logistically, it's one of those things where, do we want it in the city? Do we want to do a big ride, a small ride? Like, there's a lot of moving parts, so we're trying to figure out what we want to do. And, we just want to promote the healthy lifestyle, right? Like, you can still have cancer and be an athlete, like whether it's getting up and walking down the hall or running a marathon, right? Like, some days suck, some days you could crush it. I mean, there's been days after my brain surgery, I put on one of those wet caps and I get out and went wakeboarding on the lake. Just because I'm like, if you could do it, do it. Right. And everyone's different. It doesn't mean you have to be slamming weights or running fast. It's if you can get after it. Like, I remember I loved skiing because the chemo was so severe. I like the cold air and the fresh air. So, doing that in winter was great. Cycling in the summer, being outside, it's all good stuff.
Well, it sounds like beyond the physical health, right, which is a mix of big pharma and the farm next door, right, which is all this, the holistic stuff and the pharmaceuticals. That takes care of the shell from your head to your feet. But internally, you still got to keep this thing healthy, right? You still got to keep the brain going. So keeping yourself busy, whether it's with exercise or meeting with people, seems to be core to your health regimen as well, right? Just making sure that the mental fitness is there. So do you feel like when you're talking to the men and women that the foundation is helping, do you feel sometimes like a psychologist, like you're working more on mindset than the physical health with them as you're talking about like, hey, how can we help you? But I assume you're going in there and you're having these conversations. I got to believe that some of the conversations you get into are more about what's between the ears than necessarily what machine you're hooked up to.
It's funny. Now that you say that, I feel like going into any situation, I always feel like everybody is at the same level as me,
Yeah.
or better. I feel like if, because I go into it and I was talking to a mother whose daughter's in a battle right now. And she walked in and she almost started crying, and I'm almost started to cry and I told her my story, and she mentioned all this holistic stuff, and then I'm spitting off all of my experiences, giving me a lot of knowledge.
Right.
So I think with me, not a lot of people have 2 partial lung resections, 2 brain surgeries, 2 rounds of chemo, 2 rounds of testicular cancer surgery, leukemia, the list goes on. Where
Overachiever.
So yeah, yeah. But it's more like, I've had the brain surgery. And the first thing I say is go to Boston or go to whatever cancer clinic. Like I know MD Anderson in Texas was a good one. Dana-Farber's good. And then there's another one in LA. There's a bunch in LA, but I forget, all the names. Some people that I talk to don't want to leave Worcester because it's convenient. They're like, it's the same system as Dana-Farber. And I'm like, it's the same computer system. It's not the same doctors. It's not the same quality of care that you get in Boston. And I was misdiagnosed in St. B's. My grandfather passed away from skin cancer. He was misdiagnosed. My aunt Nancy was misdiagnosed in St. B's. St. B's said, get your affairs in order. And I do know some people that work at St. B's, and I love them. I don't know if it's the whole, the heads or whatever, but I knew I had brain tumors before they told me I had brain tumors because my numbers were elevated. And I knew that, and they didn't say that. But I also knew this was at St. B's. I knew I was going to Dana-Farber in 2 days, so I told my oncologist, and then that was rectified there. Some people are rigid, and they're like, we don't want to drive the hour. I'm like, it's an hour. Like, an hour is nothing. Like, I'll drive you. Yeah. We get this new truck donated to us from Marty's GMC. Mm-hmm. They wrapped it with Thin Blue Ride logos and everything, and we got AJ's name on it. And AJ's call sign was Anarchy. So we have Anarchy written on it.
Great call sign.
And I say his connection was AJ's good friend's mother, who was a manager at the dealership. She found out what we did. And then we kind of pushed like, hey, we could do money sponsorships. And like, we have a trailer where we sell T-shirts. And
sure.
I'm like, I pulled it with my Jeep Wrangler, which is not safe. It's like overweight. So yeah, I remember we drove up to Ridgeline. Yeah, sure. So I was going to hear it out shootouts.
Yeah.
And I was like, I felt more comfortable driving in Baghdad than I did at this thing. And I threw it out there. I said, hey, you should use a truck. And then a couple months later, hey, you guys want to pick up your truck? Like, yeah, awesome. Putting ourselves out there is huge. I'll ask for anything. Essentially, it's not for me. It's for the nonprofit. It's to help people.
Yeah. What can they say? No?
Yeah, exactly. Worst they can say is no. I know a guy right now who's getting some holistic treatment, driving 3 hours back and forth to New York. And I'm like, I'll give you a ride. I'm like, we got our Anarchy truck right outside. It's trying to get people to see the big picture of not really telling people what to do, but like, this is my experience. And this is a good option to take. And then, explaining the quality of care, the bedside manner of the oncologist and everything, the amount that you're going to have to deal with financially, because money isn't the cure, but it fucking helps. We've helped people where there's a stay-at-home mom and the dad's battling cancer, so he's not working. There's no overtime, there's no pay at all. So it's, you're kind of stuck. We don't take any percentage. Like, this is all volunteer stuff. So we're giving away more than we take in. So if we raise $5,000 for somebody, they're getting more than $5,000 that we're donating back to them.
You mentioned a few minutes ago, folks not wanting to take that hour-long ride, not wanting to be inconvenienced. I always feel like that's such a, and I judge nobody, right? I haven't been in their shoes. I'm judging nobody. But I always feel like as humans, fear of the unknown is what keeps us from seeing things on the other side, right? Well, if I go to Boston, maybe things are going to be worse than they are at the diagnosis that I have here, yeah. Right? And I don't want to face that. You, on the other hand, went into it and came out on the other side, or went into it with optimism and came out with optimism of, yeah, okay, well, this is just one more obstacle to get past. Do you feel like there's a point where people shift, or is it they either got it or they don't? Do they give in to the fear or not?
I think there's been a little shift because when I talk to somebody, like if we're raising money, I like to talk to somebody, even if I'm not raising money. If somebody's like, hey, my uncle has cancer, my dad, whatever,
Yep.
I'll talk to them on Messenger and I'll try to get them on the phone, depending on how severe it is. Sometimes I'll talk to the spouse and be like,
Yep.
look, like, not telling you what to do, but this is my experience. I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just trying to say, like, hey, this is what it is. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't have a great experience here. I had a good experience here.
Right.
And not only that, I feel like the boomer generation is you never question your doctor. And now, especially with some of these guys who are Vietnam vets who have these cancers, I'm like, no, you are your own advocate, because you get 15 minutes to tell them. For the doctor gets, anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes to tell you have cancer, to tell you that this life-changing surgery is going to happen, or, if you name it, they get that 15 minutes or very short amount of time to tell you to, crumble somebody. Some of them can do it tactfully, but it's, if you're changing somebody's, you're telling somebody they have cancer, or you're telling somebody that they have so many months to live. And it's tough for that person to understand the scope of it all. It's, you get derailed. Like many times I've been told I have cancer.
They're telling you your life is never going to be the same. From this point forward, life as you know it is going to be different. No matter what the end result is, life is going to be different. Are you up for it or not? Having very close friends, like all of us do, that have gone through similar things, it's very interesting how many different ways people handle it. And I think that's all built in your overall outlook on life. Are you looking at this as something I'm not ready to give up yet? Or, well, I had a good run and that's it. Now let's just try to make it comfortable. So Thin Blue Ride, you're writing a book, right? Because you have all this free time, right? You got all the free time in the world.
Yeah.
You're working with sponsors. Let's start talking about how everybody out there can help you. What's the book about? Like, what is the big plan for the future? Because you're going to be around now for the next 40 years. So what are you going to do with all this free time you got?
The book started my way. Travels a little bit for work. So I think it was in the middle of me being out of work because it was, unsafe because of the low oxygen levels. I think a big part of that was I started listening to audiobooks. I'm like, I love music, but at the same time, if I'm driving a half an hour to work every day, I always wanted to read the American Sniper books, the Lone Survivor books. Mm-hmm. So when I was going through treatments, that's what I did. I'm like, I want to read about heroes. I want to read about real stuff. Then when I was working at the barn, it was a half-hour drive there and back. So I listened to a ton of books. The Horse Soldiers, First Guys in Afghanistan, that was a huge, that was a good one. And then I got into like the Jack Carr stuff.
Sure.
And I love the way he wrote. So I kind of took, and I'd say I'm no author, but essentially I guess I'm an author because I wrote a book. But I kind of took the way he described things, and I kind of like that style. And I'm like, all right, let's, honestly, I thought, I didn't know if it was my heart or my lungs that was messed up at the time. And my kids that are 10 and 13 now, so I started writing a year ago. And my thing was, I don't remember when I was 10 or 12, I'm like, if I'm gone, I need them to read my story.
Yeah.
So I kind of, this was, I guess, the Clips Notes of the book, but more of like the mindset, talk about some police stories, talk about some military stuff, some tips and tricks on what I did. Like I would go into the doctors and I'd write 10 questions down prior to a visit. Hey, are you going to give me pills? All right, what are the side effects of the pills? All right, you know what I mean? You just come up with 10 questions because that way you go in prepared rather than, you're going for a follow-up visit and the doctor tells you X, Y, and Z, and then all of a sudden you're sitting in your car like, crap, I'm not going to see him for another 3 months.
Right.
And I totally forgot about, could I still go skydiving or skiing or whatever it is, you're going to do. That leaves undue anxiety and stress that your body doesn't need. So stuff like that in the book. Again, like I tried to make it not a self-help book, but if it helps you, that's great. Like I did the speeches before, and I say I'm not a motivational speaker, but if my story motivates you, then that's great. I'm not here to do this rah-rah stuff. And he's like, I'll tell you my story. I'll tell you my mindset. because to me, this is the only way that I know it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember being at a event and I was telling the guy next to me my story, and the guy across from me was saying, "Oh my God, how did you get through that?" And then I stopped and said, how would you get through that? And then, listening to it, he was totally, and I'm trying to listen to him.
Yeah.
And he was like, I had this scare when I was 21 and blah, blah. And he was like, I don't think I could do it. And I'm like, you're stronger than you think.
Yeah.
The book is at a publisher now. We're going through it. It'll be on Amazon. I'm going to have it on the website and everything. So we have thinblueride.org, which has our event. And we just started doing our online store. So these shirts are on there with a flag on the back. And then we have OD green shirts, similar style, that we sell on the site. We also have a golf tournament at Blackstone National. So we look for sponsors for that. We look for raffle items to donate. So we do a really good tournament. We've been doing this since 2017, and we double it up every year.
Wow.
Like, it's such a good tournament. We give away guns. We give away paddle boards, Weber grills. And it keeps getting better. And we're not asking a lot. I think we're doing $175 a person. Like, we give the money back to the golfer.
Sure, of course.
Overs this year, we've done Bluetooth speakers, we've done like Yeti tumblers and with our logos and stuff.
Yeah.
But we want to make it so people come every year. And I think Joe said last year, he goes, maybe we outrun our tournament time. I go, dude, I'm like, we just sold out like $144. I'm like, we're not going to the tournament. So if it works, like, let it keep working, And then we'll have random events. If we do fundraising online, like I'll put a story up, a picture, explanations. And sometimes people will want to do a fundraiser. We'll pick a date, pick a location, and then fundraiser, give the person the money from the fundraiser. There's a 5K race that we're going to have in October. I'll have some more details on that on the website. I do a lot of the Instagram and Facebook stuff under Thin Blue Ride. It's easy to do that. Post some pictures and, get some funds going. 2 of our cancer warriors on hospice right now, which I'm trying to get some funds in for that. I try not to put up too much information because I'll put out as much information as they want me to, so I don't want to go too deep and get in too detailed, but sometimes we'll pick up our tempo a little bit, get some good donations. Other times it'll be a little low. I'm like, all we do is ask for money. That's why we try and sell shirts and have events where people can enjoy it, right? And then spread our network. Because if we have a couple thousand people watch this and 50 of them donated $1, like, that's awesome. That money's going to a good place.
You're not buying yourself new skis. You're not out there like, oh, I'm going to get the best bite ever, right? This is all going to help other people that have not only had the luck, fortune to get cancer, right? Whatever happens, they get this cancer. They've also come from a community that is all about service and help. And it'd be nice to give back a little bit. They gave a lot of themselves in whatever capacity. So how can we help them? How can we give back for their sacrifice at a time that they need a little bit of help? So how can we step up and do that? Everybody can find everything. Thinblueride.org is the hub, correct? And then is it Thin Blue Ride everywhere on social as well?
I email on there. I even have my phone number on the website. Our web guy is like, dude, do you want that? I'm like, you can call me at any time. But at this point, and people don't know, we're local, but we've helped out 2 or 3 guys in California, 2 guys in Texas, a couple of guys in Florida, we've helped out guys all over the country. Yeah. Especially with the toxic exposures with the global war on terror veterans. Hunter 7 Foundation is great. They're about toxic exposure. So they'll always tag us in the posts. And then I'll reach out to the person and say, hey, we're going to help. Well, they, connect us with veterans from around the country. And we just try and help out. Sometimes I've reached out to a few and some people haven't replied back. Typically, when I reach out, people will accept the hand.
There's a thing in guys, man, especially in vets and law enforcement. There's a thing. We're never going to ask for help. Not a chance. We're way too much of a stud to ask for help, right?
Yeah.
But
exactly.
when someone says, hey, dude, you need a little bit of help, a lot of times we're like, yeah, as a matter of fact, I'm not able to do this myself. So sometimes it just takes that little bit of a push. And I love the fact that you're out there pushing, right? You've already fought the hard battles, or some of the hard battles, right? There's more to come, I'm sure. But this is an incredibly noble pursuit. And I love the fact that you're the guy heading it up, because it's not like, hey, I I know some friends that have gone through some battles, and let's help them out. This is, hey, I walked the walk. I know what you're going through. I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
It helps too.
Literally.
Like when I go in and try, like right now, I'm trying to be a golf sponsor. We're doing both sponsors. We're doing like 200, 500, 1,000, and like 7,000.
Mm-hmm.
And I walk in, and now I could drive up with this truck that's all official, and then hand out a form and say, hey, we're raising money for cancer. Yeah, I'm a retired cop, 2 tours in Iraq, 2 brain surgeries, 2 lung resections, 2 runs of chemo, 2 other surgeries. Oh, I'm still battling leukemia, but no big deal. Typically, people are like, here you go. Take our money. Well, that's what I hope. Anyway.
It's a hell of a sales pitch, man.
Yeah. But it's funny because a lot of that I stand behind stuff that I enjoy.
Yeah.
Like I like supporting other veteran companies, and I'll reach out to anybody. I reach out to Smith Glasses, I reach out to Trek Bikes, I reach out to everybody. Typically they never go answer because we're not big enough, right? But at the same time, sometimes I'll write my story and they must read it and be like, this got to be spam.
Right.
And then a couple of times I'll bring a response like, hey, former LEO and former veteran, can you help us out? And they'll help us out.
Yeah.
But I think when people hear my story, it helps.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's been there, done that. And it helps us grow and it helps us get some more support, because my thing is, that's why I tell my story so much, is if my story is going to help somebody, I'll tell it 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And if that person reaches out to their grandfather who's a Vietnam vet and sick, like we helped out this former Vietnam vet who was a vice cop, a drug cop. The family asked us for the stairs, the chair.
Yeah, the chair lift. Yeah. Yeah.
They're like, we don't need anything else. He just needs to get up and down the stairs. So we like rented it from the company. It was a ridiculous price. He ended up passing, and then, we helped out for that little bit of amount of time. And that's all the family asked for. That's, we try to do as much as we can on top of the keeping a hand on the pulse with the support. And hey, do you guys need anything? And some text messages, phone calls.
Is it just you? How many folks is Thin Blue Ride at this point? It sounds like you've got a team with you, right? You and Kelly and...
Yeah, so Kelly does a great job of keeping us boys in line. Everybody go. Yeah, his wife steps up for the golf tournament stuff as well.
Yeah.
My buddy Mike, the one who got me into cycling.
Yep.
And then our buddy Justin, he was a Worcester cop in the Marine. So we try to get all our ducks in a row. And it's, again, I'd like to grow our board to where people are like, this is a guy out in California. His daughter just passed away. We're trying to raise money for his family. And it was a friend who reached out. We heard a recent podcast that said, hey, I want to reach out. His daughter, they took her leg, and then the cancer came back, and she passed. And I was talking to the father, and he said, yeah, I want to get into a nonprofit. I go, dude, you could do something under us if you want, as Thin Blue Ride. Like, if you want to hold a race or whatever. As far as our books go with money, like you could look at all of our tax stuff. Since 2017, we've done over $800,000 of fundraising. And all that, there's stuff that we have to pay for, like the shirts, the trailer,
of course,
all the other stuff.
Of course.
But it's like, nobody's taking a dime. This is all volunteer basis. All the money's going in the right place. Not like some of the stuff you hear with other organizations that, people are getting 6-figure salaries. And again, I would love to take a salary if we were making a ton of money. There's a lot of work that goes into this. And a lot of it is research, finding out, sending emails, calling people, going to places like this. It's a lot. I love doing it. I wish I was more organized as far as getting that stuff in place. I went from being a cop to making shirts, raising money, giving it to Pan Mass. And then it's, hey, let's help this family. Hey, let's help this family. So to me, it's easy stuff to facilitate a fundraising event or make a t-shirt or put something up online and let it run itself. But again, there's always room for growth.
It never happens alone, right? You need the support staff around you. So I would love for the folks that are listening to check out the website, think about assisting in any way you can, even if it's, someone that may be interested in helping, someone that may need some assistance. You might have some ideas for events that you can host in your area where Thin Blue Ride can come in and partner with you, or you can work with them. Yeah. I would love to see some of that come of these conversations, because it's clear this isn't going anywhere. 800 grand is no small amount. This is a significant amount of money for people who definitely need it. So I can only see this growing more and more in the future. As I land this plane here, we could sit here and talk for another hour anyway, because I've got a list of questions that I could ask you.
Yeah.
But people can go to Thin Blue Ride. Anything that I missed talking about that you really want people to know here so that they can get a better understanding of what you're doing or how they might be able to help?
I'd say even if you don't want to make a donation, follow us on social media.
Cool.
Just see what we do. And that's going to show you, kind of full spectrum of, you could say, hey, your social media guy sucks, which is me. Okay. Or, the content is there. We're trying to help people. We're trying to push stuff.
Right.
And again, the more we spread our network, the more people we can help. Just, help spread the network. We find it very hard to say no to people or no to, reason. Like we've helped out corrections officers. We've helped out. If people come to us, we're going to help them. And if we can't help them under the scopes of our first responder, veteran, or family of, we'll point them in the right direction and, hopefully coach them into, some more knowledge on what they're about to embark on.
JD, you're an incredible man. I'm glad you're still around. I'm glad you're still doing the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to bring you back here at some point down the line, maybe 6 months, maybe the end of this year, and we'll kind of get caught up on how the year went, how some of the events went. Find all the information on the website, follow social media. Hell, he put his phone number out there. Give him a call.
Yeah.
Right? I might just do that to test you. I might just call you at 3 a.m. and tell you, hey, what are you doing, man? So, all right, man. Thank you so much. Please, everybody, check out thinblueride.org. And JD, I can't thank you enough for being here, man. I can't wait for people to hear this.